you think about it, all bosses are optional, as are all video games, as is almost every aspect of our lives, such as presenting list videos. So I'll just be off then.
Stay where you are.
It was worth a shot. Well, while it isn't optional, at least presenting this video is easier than the optional bosses we're here to talk about today, who are so brutal, so punishing, so astonishingly difficult that only the most elite of players will stand a chance at vanquishing them. Here then are 7 of the hardest optional bosses for elite players only, handpicked from the top comments from our previous video on the subject. Enjoy, and beware spoilers for these following games.
When given the option to, of your own free will, attempt a challenge that is so difficult it's likely to make you sob with frustration, most people would choose not to do that. The no option. Answer in the negative. And that's why those people aren't Dark Souls fans, because Dark Souls fans love that. Take, for example, Darkeater Midir, an optional boss from Dark Souls 3's Ringed City DLC that is widely acknowledged to be the hardest boss in any Dark Souls game, which is really saying something. If you enjoy a peaceful, fun life that isn't a Sisyphean ordeal of endless misery, you can ignore Midir entirely. If, however, you live only to suffer, then you can fight Midir properly if you knock him off a cliff. Which doesn't do much for his temperament, let's just say that. Midir is a massive, crystalline dragon who can fly, attacks with his claws and tail, and, as a bonus treat for you and the temperature of your skin, can also breathe fire. Plus, he's got a million hit points and etc. You know, standard From Software humiliation fetish stuff. Yada yada. If that was all Midir had up his scaly sleeve, we might be okay. However, Midir also has a special attack known as the Focused Dark Beam, a breathtakingly powerful mouth laser that is both spectacularly deadly and almost impossible to avoid. Now, I'm sure this isn't an instant kill if you've sunk enough points into Vigor, or eaten a bunch of extremely rare laser-proof berries, or whatever the Dark Souls designers think it would be funny to make you do this time, but for 99% of Dark Souls players, it doesn't matter how many Estus flasks you have to hand, this Dark Beam is one-shotting you. Back to the bonfire you go. A reminder, this boss is optional, as in you have the option to do literally anything else instead of fighting him. Hey, Dark Souls fans, I'm talking to... Nope, they're fighting Midir again.
If I had only one wing, I would expect to be less flight capable and less effective in a boss fight than if I had 2. And yet, Final Fantasy VII supermodel / supervillain Sephiroth seems to be getting on just fine with his. And here in Kingdom Hearts 1, instead of flapping around in circles hampered by having but a single feathered limb, Sephiroth is the most difficult boss fight in the whole game. You don't have to fight Sephiroth, but if you're in the market for an ass-kicking, you can eventually find him in the Olympus Coliseum's Platinum match, hidden behind these mysterious question marks. What could they mean? Sephiroth is what? Admittedly, the one-winged angel himself spends most of the battle with his boots on the ground, not soaring overhead. Still, if the asymmetry of his flight appendage is putting him off balance, you wouldn't know it, on account of him being as hard as a Wordle, all in ancient Sumerian glyphs. He's fast and twice as tall as Sora, with a sword longer than both of them put together, plus he can counterattack all your fave combos and conjure biblically accurate pillars of fire. And that's just his first phase. If you live long enough to see Sephiroth's second and third phases, he'll blast you not only with combat barks voiced by 90s boy band heartthrob Lance Bass, but also a whole bunch of flaming meteorites. It's pretty intense. Defeat Sephiroth in your Colosseum duel and you win the grand prize of the One-Winged Angel keychain, which, by coincidence, is what I got out of my local Final Fantasy gachapon machine. And that was much, much easier, so consider your alternatives.
I dreamt for so long. My flesh was dull gold, and my blood rotted. Corpse after corpse left in my wake.
While there are well over 100 bosses in From Software's fantasy epic Elden Ring, you only have to defeat a little over 10 of them to actually finish the game. Although, why would you want to skip out on such faves as Lich Dragon Fortisax? Nothing but good times with that guy. However, one optional boss in Elden Ring has become legendary, and not just for her impeccable taste in headgear and prosthetic arms, but for how brutally tough she is to beat. This is Malenia, Blade of Miquella, who you encounter at the end of the optional Miquella's Halig Tree Legacy Dungeon, a big horrible tree full of big horrible things that want to kill you bigly and horribly. And while Malenia isn't the biggest thing hanging around this tree, she's certainly the most horrible thanks to a number of laughably unfair factors. Let's start with your standard From Software stuff. She's tougher than a $2 steak and hits harder than a steakhouse manager when you complain about the steak. Then there's her move known as the Waterfowl Dance, a whirling tornado of blades and misery that's almost impossible to figure out how to dodge on your first 20 or so attempts. And if you block instead of dodging, even more bad news, because what makes Malenia more difficult than organising a short-notice get-together with friends in your 30s is the fact that every time she hits you, even if you're blocking, she heals herself. And she's going to hit you. A lot. But maybe you survive all that and finally deplete Malenia's health bar. Well, don't start celebrating too early, because this is Elden Ring, and of course, Malenia has a second form, in which she gains wings made out of thousands of butterflies and loses all of her clothes.
The scarlet bloom flowers once more.
That sounds bad. Now Malenia can do huge, room-filling AoE attacks that not only do massive damage, but also infect you with Scarlet Rot, a disease that passively demolishes your health bar while you're trying to avoid being shish kebabbed by this Smashing Pumpkins album cover come to life.
I am Malenia, Blade of Miquella. And I have never known defeat.
Yeah, well, just you wait until attempt 300.
Versus Night Terror. Fight!
The Soul Calibur series of fighting games is no stranger to secret characters. From the bizarrely adorable Olkadan, who has the head of an owl,
Those who get in my way will die!
to the multidisciplinary fighter that they would probably choose a different name for if they were releasing the game now.
Edge Master.
If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Anyway, Soul Calibur 3 had another secret character in the form of an optional boss so difficult that fans still curse his name to this very day. Night Terror. The usual final boss of Soul Calibur 3's Tales of Soul story mode is Abyss, a corrupted form of the character Zasalamel.
Versus Abyss. Fight!
However, if you take a very specific path through Tales of Souls, for example saying you want power rather than knowledge, or declining to chase after Zasalamel and fighting the right battles, when you get to the final encounter you don't face Abyss as usual, but instead find yourself face to face with this thing, which immediately tries to laser you in half. If you can avoid that, which will take off over half your health if it hits you, you're now in a stand-up fight with Night Terror, a souped-up version of Nightmare who wields the completed Soul Edge and is cheaper than Ebenezer Scrooge shopping the Temu sale. Night Terror hits hard and relentlessly, that's a given, but he's also incredibly good at dodging and blocking your attacks, all the while setting up to punish you for having the temerity to try and land a strike on him. He'll batter you senseless and dash in quickly for devastating grab attacks, and when you're not being smashed by these, you'll be getting knocked over the edge for a ring out. Or being hit with utterly ridiculous special moves like the ability to fly 15 feet into the air and barrage you with unblockable orange lasers for almost your entire health bar. You're thinking to yourself, but if I get lucky, I might be able to knock him off the edge for a ring out and an instant win. To which Soul Calibur 3 says, nice try, he has wings. Brutal. All that is to say, I can see why they called this guy Night Terror, because I still sometimes wake up in a cold sweat thinking about this MF.
You lose.
No matter how high you rise in life, there's always someone hot on your heels, waiting to try and knock you off your perch. For us, it's the guy who started arriving at the bakery before us and getting the edge piece of brownie that we were after. And for the Dragonborn from The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, it's the Ebony Warrior. The Ebony Warrior is a special enemy added in Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC who only shows up when you reach level 80. Once that's happened, it won't be long before you're confronted by this guy, who looks like he got lost on his way to a Dark Souls convention and who apparently is bored.
I have done all that can be done. There is nothing left. No quests to be undertaken, no villains to be slain.
Or, yeah, I guess that's a more poetic way of putting it. Anyway, Ebby here is keen for you to kill him so he can go to warrior heaven in style, and asks you to come meet him at his campsite high in the Velothi Mountains and ram a sword through his face.
When you're ready, come find me at my last vigil.
However, that's easier said than done, because as soon as you head to the mountains and accept the challenge, you'll discover that the Ebony Warrior is stronger than the wording of the letter I'm about to write to Bethesda about how they need to tone down the difficulty of the Ebony Warrior, because damn.
Like the bite of a flea!
First of all, this ebony armor he's clad in head to toe is no joke, and no matter what kind of magic dragon-slaying sword you have equipped, you'll be doing chip damage at best. Also, did you know that ebony is apparently the greatest substance in existence, because not only does that ebony armor block loads of damage, his ebony sword absorbs health when he hits you, as well as doing preposterous amounts of damage into the bargain. He also has healing magic, and magic that reduces the amount of damage he takes, and has a bow that can paralyze you, and can even do your special Fuzrodar shout, because why not at this point? Damn bro, I thought you wanted me to kill you. Why are you making this so difficult? Eventually, after 3 to 5 business days of wailing on him, you might be able to put the Ebony Warrior down, at which point he falls over, mutters about Sovngarde, and that's it.
Sovngarde.
You can loot all his stuff, but at this point you don't really need it. You've done all that can be done, there's nothing left. No quests to be undertaken, no villains to be slain, no challenges to face. Man, I'm starting to see where he was coming from. Maybe we can find someone to kill us if we head back into town.
In Game Boy Advance RPG Golden Sun: The Lost Age, you lead Felix and his crew of magical adepts on a quest to bring back the power of alchemy while being pursued by the heroes of the previous game who think doing that will destroy the world. all of which has basically nothing to do with the game's optional nightmare superboss, Dullahan, who's hanging out waiting for you at the end of the game's hardest dungeon, just in case you fancy taking a pop at him. Dullahan is a giant animated suit of armour with neither head nor helmet, and also the hardest boss in all of Golden Sun. It is entirely possible to complete the Lost Age and go about your life without ever meeting Dullahan, who is designed for masochists with something to prove. If you are one such masochist and determined to face this big clanky boy, it's going to take a party of high-level characters, a trip to optional dungeon Animos Inner Sanctum, and more careful planning than the Normandy landings. Having voluntarily strolled into Dullahan's gaff, prepare yourself for an onslaught from the guy with the highest HP, attack, defense and luck in the game, and who's got more moves than you've had hot dinners. Your fightingest chance is to throw all your summons at Dullahan straight away and hope for the best. Specifically, you should be hoping he doesn't in turn hit you with Charon, his very own super powerful summon, which he's allowed to do as much as he likes, and often does. Hey now, summons was my idea. Rude. With your summon rush, hard-earned skill and tolerance for suffering, you can eventually evaporate Dullahan and seize the summon stone for Iris, goddess of the sun and the most powerful summon in the entire game. Wow, yeah, welcome aboard, Iris. You would have been really helpful about 10 minutes ago.
Mostly, the enemies in the world of Mario aren't particularly intimidating. It's mainly mushrooms, flowers, and whatever the heck Birdo is.
Thank you. This is as far as you go.
The only thing we can say for sure is, she's not a bird. For Super Mario RPG, Nintendo handed over development to RPG masters Squaresoft, which even then was most famous for the Final Fantasy RPGs. This game adapted the battle system made famous by those games and applied it to Mario, with you facing off against classic Mario enemies in turn-based combat. Many of these enemy designs will be familiar to fans of more conventional Mario games. Cutesy, anthropomorphized animals and plants, and even the unique designs created by Square for this game are in keeping with the cheery cartoon world. Well, apart from this terrifying carrot. I'm never eating my vegetables again. Oh, who am I kidding? I wasn't going to eat them anyway. There is one optional boss that appears to have wandered in from a completely different Square RPG though. And what's more, he's even tougher than the game's final boss, Smithy. Smithy, who is a robot blacksmith, and not, as the name implies, some bloke you met down the pub whose surname is Smith. The optional boss in question is Culex, Dark Knight of Vanda, and bizarrely, rather than being a cute animal or plant rendered in the 3D visual style of the rest of the game's characters, he's a sort of purple shirtless demigod drawn in Final Fantasy style pixel art. And is he sticking his ass out? Maybe if Bowser looked like that, the princess would agree to be kidnapped. Before the fight, Culex tells you he has travelled to this dimension in search of its strongest knight in order to challenge them in battle. Naturally, Mario is the closest thing to a strongest knight in this world, so it's up to you and your RPG party to beat this extremely tricky boss if you want to 100% the game. Defeat Culex and he'll compliment you on your spirit and your bravery before disappearing back to his own dimension with no explanation of how he came to be here in the first place or why he looks completely different to all the other enemies in the game. It's one of the Mario series' greatest mysteries, along with, what the heck is Birdo? If eggs come out of her mouth, does food go up her butt? I'm so confused.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Those were 7 of the hardest optional bosses for elite players only, as suggested by the handpicked top commenters on our previous video on the subject. If you'd like to watch another video from Outside Xbox that is somewhat similar, can I recommend this one up here? Or something else from our sister channel Outside Extra down here? This one's good too. And if you'd like to support the channel, then you can go to patreon.com/oxclub and join the supporters club and get on the official Discord, where we will see you later and or back here next week for another list.